So Six Flags Fiesta Texas has announced their new for 2022 roller coaster. That's right, they're getting a new roller coaster next year. It's called Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger. I think I got that right. Just to temper expectations a little bit, this isn't like a giant coaster or anything by large-scale thrill roller coaster standards. It's actually pretty dang small, but there's nothing wrong with that. You can still have a lot of fun on small rides, and this one looks like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, even though it's not a huge ride in any way, I think this ride itself is huge and will have very big implications for at least Six Flags, but maybe even the entire amusement industry. Let me explain real quick. What I think is most important about this ride is it is a B&M. For those of you who are not super into roller coasters or the amusement industry, as I know a lot of you all are not that watch this channel, B&M is a roller coaster manufacturer, and really what you need to know most about them right this second is that they make some of the most expensive roller coasters on the planet. Very reliable, very consistent rides, high capacity, always fan favorites, very butter smooth. I mean, you get what you're paying for with them, but these are not cheap rides. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first B&M coaster that Six Flags will have installed since X-Flight at Six Flags Great America, all the way back in 2012. So by the time this ride opens, it will have been the first B&M at a Six Flags park in an entire decade. Now, Six Flags has been struggling financially recently, past 10 or 20 years, which is why it's been so long since their last expensive coaster install, last B&M anyway. So hopefully, them being able to install another B&M next year means that they're either doing a bit better financially or just being better about how they manage their finances, being able to install a ride this expensive, maybe not big, but expensive in their park and their chain. Just being able to make this investment is really awesome. So hopefully this ride says that we can hopefully see some more larger scale coasters coming to Six Flags parks recently. It seems, again, for the last 10 years, aside from RMC conversions, we haven't really seen any big roller coasters go into any Six Flags parks or any large scale investments, I should say. So hopefully Six Flags will be installing some new bigger rides, bigger investments soon, and this is especially promising to me coming right out of the pandemic. I was worried that Six Flags would be in a lot of financial trouble coming out of this pandemic, and I was worried it would be a while before they'd be able to install any kind of coaster again, but it looks like they're coming out of the gates right with this, so hopefully that means they're in pretty good shape and we can expect some good things from Six Flags coming soon. Six Flags used to have this really weird policy that or not really policy, but just the way they did things, is that they tried to install a new ride at every single one of their parks every single year. Now, that in and of itself, there's nothing bad about that idea as long as you have the money to back it. The problem is Six Flags didn't really have the money to back it, so most of their new ride installs every year ended up just being like small flat rides being installed, some thrilling, some kiddie, but mostly just small generic flat rides being installed across the chain every single year, which there's nothing wrong with small flat rides. It's just that there was money being spent on small flat rides, so much so that it was preventing Six Flags from investing in any kind of larger attractions like what we're seeing right here. Additionally, these small flat rides just ended up going to parks half the time that really didn't need them. So it ended up just being a lot of wasted money, in my opinion, when they could have saved that money, put it all elsewhere, and given a park an attraction like this. But it appears that's more of the strategy that they're taking now, going hopefully from this year forward. I'm not saying they should stop installing the smaller flat rides, but only install them when they're really needed at parks that really need them. I think it's perfectly fine for some parks to take a couple of years break without any attraction so that another park or even that park can get a larger attraction, and I'm glad that that's the direction Six Flags seems to be going here. Piggybacking off of that a little bit, you'll notice that this roller coaster was announced by Six Flags Fiesta Texas itself rather than Six Flags Corporate. Those of you who are familiar with Six Flags will know that Six Flags usually does their ride announcements for each year in the form of a big long video that's usually kind of cringy, where they do the announcements for every single park, what every single park is getting, all in one video. I never found that to be a really great way to deliver the park news, at least not in the way that Six Flags did it. I like the idea of, all of the announcements for the entire chain being in one video, but the way Six Flags did it, a lot of times the announcements were so rapid fire that you couldn't figure out your brain just couldn't process which rides were going to which parks, and it felt like they were trying to rush through most of the time just to get the whole video done as fast as possible, just to hold people's attention, which means that a lot of the bigger, more significant rides that probably deserved a little bit more attention just did not get enough screen time, in my opinion. So this new method of all the parks just doing their own individual announcements, which is what most other chains do, I think it's going to work out a lot better. Again, I liked the idea of all the announcements being in one video. It just never really worked out, and especially since not every park will be getting something new every year anymore, this just makes more sense. This also hopefully will allow each individual Six Flags park to kind of develop more of their own personality, so to speak, their own feel, and that'll hopefully help them all to feel more like individual parks, and that should help Six Flags from a business perspective. I know a lot of people that tend to view Six Flags parks as if you've done one, you've done them all kind of thing. I know people that go to like all the Cedar Fair parks because they don't even realize they're in the same chain, but they've only been to like one or maybe two Six Flags parks because they think all the rest are about the same, which isn't exactly true, so that they can develop these unique identities at each individual park, and then people, I think, will be more likely to visit other parks when they're out traveling and stuff like that, visit more of Six Flags' parks so they can experience the different, environments, and that should help Six Flags as a chain, I think. Now, one last kind of whole industry implication that I love about this ride is that, and this isn't necessarily this ride specifically, but this ride is just adding to this, and that is this ride is, I don't want to say decently themed, but it has a theme going for it, it has a story going for it, and that's awesome. I love that, at least in America, we're finally moving away from the phase of just rides being put down on concrete, painted to color, and given a name and moved on. I think it's just so much better. It adds so much more to the experience when there's some kind of theme to go along with it. It doesn't have to be something super crazy extensive like Disney or Universal or something. In fact, I don't want it to be. I just want some kind of little story in the queue that gets me hyped up for the ride, and then some kind of unique theming style or architectural style. The architecture of the buildings and the colors of the ride and the scenery and all that kind of reflect that a little bit, and that kind of gives the ride a unique identity, so to speak. And I don't know, just some of my favorite coasters end up edging out over other coasters because they have just more personality to them, which is what this kind of theming trend seems to be doing, is just giving rides more personality, and I absolutely love that. Now, this does follow a DC Comics theme. Six Flags has the right to those and does use them a lot, and I usually hate when Six Flags uses the Six Flags comic theme because it's usually to take a generic character that we know a lot about, like Superman or Batman or Green Lantern or something, slapping its name on a ride and moving on, which is super annoying because there's like no theming or atmosphere with that. Usually they'll put the same name on like 5 different rides that have nothing to do with each other, and it just gets super confusing. So I'm more okay with this, even though it is a DC theme. It's a more obscure character that not as many people are familiar with, and it seems to be one that Six Flags hasn't used in the past, so as long as they don't use it in a similar manner in the future, I'll be okay with that. And it does have that differentiating name. It is Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger. Hopefully that will remain a unique name and identifier for this coaster. The theming and storyline that they're going for with this ride is basically that Dr. Diabolical has created a bunch of evil creatures in her laboratory, but she needs some way to bring them to life. So she's stealing park guests, locking them onto this giant machine that's going to suck out, and I quote, essence of human adrenaline and fear in order to power and bring her creatures to life. And apparently there's also a fountain of youth, so you just stay young forever. So you're just trapped on this ride for all of eternity, having your adrenaline sucked out to power some creatures. So there's your storyline there. It's definitely an interesting and somewhat unique one, so I appreciate that. And you can kind of see through this video that's been playing over and over and over again while I've been talking, kind of the way the ride looks, the whole aesthetic on it all kind of complements that kind of steampunk but with an evil edge kind of look, and I absolutely love that. I think this ride looks sick. Alright, so now I'm finally ready to talk about the track layout and everything of this coaster itself. Six Flags Fiesta Texas has provided this little layout overview page with some stats and stuff on it. And they are, as small as this ride is, they are still claiming a world record on it. Six Flags loves their obscure world records, and this is claiming the world record for the steepest drop on a dive coaster. That's right, this is a 95-degree drop. It's slightly beyond vertical, whereas all the other dive coasters just have a straight 90-degree vertical drop, except for Oblivion. A few of the other earlier ones, I think, had near vertical drops, but not quite vertical. But this one's beyond vertical, and that's very interesting to me because I believe that this is the first B&M with a beyond vertical drop. I can't think of any other B&M coaster with a beyond vertical drop, and I love B&M drops. I've never been on a dive coaster before, but like all of the B&Ms I've been on, Wild Eagle, Fury 325, Intimidator, Diamondback, those all have awesome first drops. So I really want to know what a beyond vertical drop on a B&M would be like. It seems like it'd be pretty dang awesome. So I'm excited to hear when the reviews come out for this one. It's easy to say, oh, it's just slightly beyond vertical. I'm not sure it'll be that much more intense than, a just straight vertical drop on a regular dive coaster, but I'm thinking and hoping that people will be surprised. Now, it is 150 feet tall, as you can see, which is, not even close to the world record for the tallest dive coaster, but 150 feet, that's still a pretty decent height to be plunging face first in a beyond vertical drop. So I think it's tall enough to give a huge thrill. Nothing has to be record breaking. So after you climb that 150-foot lift hill, you can see you have your typical B&M dive coaster 90-degree turn, in this case to the right, and of course it's going to be a very slow, drawn out turn. Gives you a great view of how high up you are and gives you plenty of time to think about your impending fate when you get into the plunge. It of course has a holding brake there, or I guess it's actually a holding chain. It's not actually a brake, there's just a chain there that holds you. It's kind of interesting how it works, but you are going to get held over the edge there staring straight at the ground before you're going to get released. I mean, typical dive coaster style there, exactly what we would expect. Also, in the traditional dive coaster style, you pull out of the drop immediately into an amusement. It just seems like every B&M dive coaster now. Now, I haven't actually ridden a B&M dive coaster, so I don't know exactly how a lot of these elements are going to feel. I can kind of guess because I've ridden plenty of B&Ms before, and I know those all kind of feel the same, but I also know B&M dive coasters move and feel a lot differently just because of the way the weight is distributed in the much shorter but wider trains. So I'll just take my best guess here, but I don't really know exactly what this ride experience is going to feel like just looking at this chart here. But you pull out of the amusement right into a 0G roll. What I think is interesting about this 0G roll is I'm just noticing, looking at this diagram, that you start the 0G roll, down in that valley there, but then when you pull out of the 0G roll, you're actually higher than you were when you started. So that's a little bit interesting there. And then you pull up right into that brake run that goes into at 75-foot near vertical drop. So you get a second drop there, near vertical, not quite vertical, and it looks like it's got some slope to it, so it's not going to be anywhere near as thrilling as that first one. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. You pull out of that next drop into what they're calling a wild banked turn, which I don't know if that's going to be any fun on a dive coaster. But then there's they're calling it an extreme airtime hill. Wow. But it's just an airtime hill. It looked like, based on the video you saw earlier, it seems to be the trains are getting a decent bit of speed going over that airtime hill. So hopefully you will actually get a little bit of airtime. And then there's a high-speed spiral, which is kind of a helix going into the brake run, and you seem to get some speed on that as well based on the video. So I'm thinking that airtime hill and that last helix will hopefully be a bit more intense than your traditional, boring dive coaster finale, especially since there's no inversions in the second half there. So yeah, as you can see, it's a very short ride, especially for a large-scale steel coaster, but it looks like it's still going to be a lot of fun. Worst thing that happens is that second half ends up completely sucking and not accomplishing anything. And in that case, at least you have an awesome beyond vertical drop. You get some good hang time on those first two inversions, and you just have to suffer through the second half being boring. So Six Flags Fiesta Texas has also provided us with a POV video here, which is really awesome because a lot of times parks will just kind of tease you, make you wait on the POV, which I always find annoying. It's great to have it off the bat, so I'll just do some live commentary of it real quick. We dispatched the station, we're going with the lift. As you can see, it is a decently tall lift. Of course, it's not the tallest dive coaster out there, but it's definitely not the shortest either. You do get some decent height going up to 150 feet up here. As we cross the top, you can kind of see some of the other attractions in the park. And those of you who are familiar with Six Flags Fiesta Texas, this will give you a look at where this ride's located. You can see Iron Rattler over there in the distance, and whatever this is over to the left of the drop here, I think it's some kind of mine train coaster. There's their water park. So leaning into the beyond vertical drop, and there we go. You can see it definitely does look pretty steep up into the Immelman. And then the zero G roll actually looks like you roll through it at a decent pace, which will be fun. I love zero G rolls. And then it's already mid-course time, and just like other dive coasters, you slow to a near stop on this mid-course just so you can have another drop moment. But unfortunately, there's no holding chain on that second drop, which is really disappointing. I mean, no dive coaster has that. But you can see what I mean going over that airtime hill. It looks like you'll actually get airtime because you're going pretty fast. I don't know exactly what that helix thing will feel like, but that airtime hill, it looks like you will get airtime. So that's awesome. Taking a look at some of the pictures that Six Flags Fiesta Texas, showed to us. You can see here in this one, just like I said earlier, the ride looks sick. So you can kind of see the ride station in the bottom left-hand corner there. And the station, it's not the greatest coaster station. It's more of a cover there. But I do like the kind of brick and then gold steel support, kind of aesthetic they got going on there. It really complements, I think, the theming that they're going for very well. Complements the rest of the ride very well. It's kind of annoying when stations don't go with the rides that they're representing, and this matches this coaster perfectly. And you can kind of see with the sunset there and just how awesome this ride looks. And you can see they've really done a good job of fitting this ride into a very small space here. I was hearing before, when there were rumors about a Six Flags Fiesta Texas coaster, that this park is decently landlocked and kind of running out of space, so they had to kind of squeeze this in here where they had space, and I think they did a great job here. Again, it is a small ride, maybe because of the space restraints, but they did do a really good job, fitting a decently sized ride into this plot of land for, what the size of the land plot is. Here's a concept rendering of kind of what it's going to look like from the ground. So again, as I've said several times, because I know people are going to complain about how the ride's not very tall, but look, that's a pretty decent drop size, drop height there. You're going to get a bit of airtime and quite a bit of thrill out of that drop. And again, just this ride looks so good, especially from the ground here. I know the sunset in the distance and the way that the art is rendered contributes to that a little bit, but look at the supports, the golden supports, and they're not just painted golden. They kind of seem to have some kind of like rustic texturing on them. This ride's going to look awesome. I can't wait to see some construction photos and videos coming out and to see what this thing looks like when it opens. So I like this view because you can get a good look at kind of what the queue structure looks like. So it looks like you'll enter all the way over at the on the right of this picture. Sorry, I can't talk there. Kind of by where the Immelman is over there, and you can see on the right, kind of right under that overbanked curve, is where you're going to have the main overflow queue, and that's going to empty out into that building, it looks like. I don't know if you caught that, but there appears to be some kind of theming building right in the middle there. So if you were disappointed by the station building, it looks like that building won't disappoint. It appears that you actually queue through that building, and hopefully there'll be a bit of theming in there, maybe some kind of pre-show, but at least a bit of theming to kind of set up the story and what exactly is going on here. I do like that the main overflow queue is right in the middle of the main bowl section of track, where the main drop, the Immelman, the drop off the brake run, the airtime hill, the banked turn are all going to be happening all around you while you're in that main overflow queue. So even though it is just back and forth cattle pins, you'll have some awesome, ride shots all around you. Another thing I find particularly interesting is there is what appears to be another path also going into the building. You'll see on the left of the building, closest to us, going right by that last spiral. What they called it, I'll call it a helix, but it isn't really a helix, is it? But that's obviously those are people waiting in line. That's the last queue path going from this theming building all the way over to the station. But behind it, there's an empty path that I presume is the ride exit that appears to go through that building as well. So maybe there's some more theming after the ride, some kind of post-show of some kind. I guess it's more likely that the back half of that building is just a gift shop or something. But wouldn't it be cool if there was a post-show? I think that would be pretty neat. Here's a more aerial view of the ride. So you Six Flags Fiesta Texas experts out there, I've never been here, but you experts out here can see here where it interfaces with some of the existing rides and where it interfaces with the pathways. There appears to be some kind of theater on the left there. And by here you can get a better look at the queue, and you can see from the overflow queue on the right, you actually enter that theming building all the way at the top of the building. So there's some kind of theming that goes all the way through the entire building, and then you come out of there at the bottom. You can see something that wasn't really obvious before is that there is a main park path that goes under the lift hill, the 0G roll, and the brake run. I always think it's cool when parts of roller coasters go over park paths. It makes it more interactive and fun for guests. It makes the ride a little bit more intimidating and scary because it's right above the pass, and this actually does that. I didn't notice that. And there is the train going over the airtime hill there, so this gives us a better look at what the train is going to look like. Looks like 7 riders across, which is not the biggest dive coaster trains B&M has ever done, but you can see they are floorless trains. That's pretty much standard on dive coasters now. The trains don't look as awesome as the rest of the ride is. You can see there's just a yellow on the bottom there. Hopefully they end up putting the ride logo there. That's what most dive coasters do. Maybe that's just missing from this animation. And you can see it is going to have vest restraints. Some people are going to hate that because a lot of people swear dive coasters are only good when you have regular over-the-shoulder restraints. I've personally never really had a problem with B&M vest restraints, which is kind of what B&M is transitioning all their rides over to now, these new vest restraints. People say you can't get airtime with them. I've gotten airtime with them just fine. I always get airtime on Wild Eagle, but a little bit of airtime on Thunderbird. And at least recently, Thunderbird still chokes you a little bit, but Wild Eagle, they've modified it where the vest doesn't choke you quite as much, so hopefully that's how this one will be as well. What I don't like about those vest restraints is that they're just gray. Again, hopefully the train design changes a little bit before the ride actually opens, because the train design is probably the most underwhelming part of the entire design of this ride to me. The track and the supports look so sick, and that train just looks okay. Nothing looks wrong with it, but I mean, it just doesn't stand out. I hope they maybe make the vests on those vest restraints red or gold or some kind of other standout color. Just having them gray is just kind of boring. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the aesthetic of the train specifically on this ride, but they do their job, I'm sure. This also gives you a closer look in the very bottom left there of that theming building. At least that's what we're assuming it is, at least the indoor queue section that we talked about earlier there. You can see there are 2 kind of smokestacks on there and some pipes coming out of what looks like a themed window there, like a weather vane looking thing on top. So yeah, it is themed, so that's pretty awesome. I'm going to take those decorations on the roof there as proof that whatever is inside this building, inside this queue building, is going to be some kind of theming of some kind. We'll see what happens when the ride actually opens. Y'all can come back and comment on this video if the ride opens and the inside of the queue is just, you know, like a brown wall or something. Just look at the way that train is just swooping out of that zero G roll into that kind of tight turn there, at least tight as in it comes out of the zero G roll and immediately pulls into that turn. Honestly, that zero G roll, I'm just a huge zero G roll fan, so, but that zero G roll pulling into that turn there, that looks like the best part of the ride aside from the drop to me. There's the Immelman there. It doesn't look like it would be my favorite Immelman ever. It looks like it kind of pulls out of the hang time a little bit too early. I prefer Immelmans that wait a little bit longer to flip you over so you get a little bit more hang time. But again, this is just a concept artwork rendering, so how the actual, you know, ride turns out when it's actually built, it'll be a little different than this. So we'll see what the final Immelman looks like, but I'm not a huge fan of this one just looking at it. The drop looks a little bit shorter in this picture, and I'm not 100% sure why, but I'm just not going to worry about it. But you can see, kind of looking at right before the drop starts to level out, you can really see where it really is beyond vertical. They're not just saying that. It really does look like the steepest drop that B&M has ever done. And if you look really closely at, you know, above the first track joint above the support before the, you know, track levels out, if you look closely, it really almost looks like Gerstlauer track profiling there, the way that it kind of goes beyond vertical and levels out there. So I'm really interested to hear what this ride's going to feel like when people start riding it, and I really hope that I'll get to ride it one day because that drop just looks so much fun. I love B&M drops, like I said, and I've experienced some beyond vertical drops on Gerstlauer Eurofighters, so like that, man, I want to ride that and see what it feels like. Here's the drop from the other angle, from the other side, and again, just looking, it looks even better in this shot. Just looking at that track profiling makes me want to go ride this right now. But you can see behind it, there's the Quarry Wall and their Starflyer and Joker, their giant Discovery back there. And then I see a little bit of Superman, a Krypton coaster, which is another B&M back there. So again, for you Six Flags Fiesta Texas people trying to figure out where exactly this ride's going to sit, there's some more rides you can kind of orient yourself as to where this is. I'm not super familiar with Fiesta Texas's park layout myself, so I have no idea where this ride's going, but so they gave us yet another angle to look at the drop here. They really like the drop, but I guess it is a dive coaster. It kind of is all about the drop. But anyways, more of a low down angle from the same position as the first shot. You can see again Rattler there in the background, so you can orient yourself. The last picture they give us here, facing from the complete opposite direction of all the other pictures. This is more on the park path, looking at the ride, but this is kind of up at a higher angle on top of some buildings, I guess, is where this would have been shot from. But just looking at the background there, you can see their boomerang right there, which I think really needs to be repainted because it looks, that orange and bright like baby blue there just look awful next to this thing. This thing looks so good. Maybe it's just me, and maybe I just like the aesthetic style they're going for here, but the track colors on this coaster make everything else in this picture, to me, every other coaster in the background, look like total bleh. Like, look at, I think it's Goliath is there, Batman clone, way back on the left there. That doesn't look any good. Anyways, just here's a view of the ride from the other side. Again, you can see the drop there, which is the focus. And you can also see the drop off the mid-course right behind it, which is nowhere near as steep. So I don't know why they bring the train to a complete stop on the mid-course for an inferior drop. All dive coasters do that, bringing the train to a near stop on the brake run just to have a second dive moment that is not a second dive moment, because mainly because there's no holding brake, or I guess it's a holding chain, but there's no holding chain there. I really wish, and this is a general dive coaster thing, not this coaster in particular, that dive coasters would have a second holding chain on the mid-course, if it's going to have a mid-course and if it's going to bring the train to a complete stop on the mid-course, because I've heard from people that have ridden these B&M dive coasters that you have the excitement of the holding brake, then the drop and your adrenaline's going, and then all the speed just gets killed on the mid-course as the train comes to a near complete stop there, and then you don't really get anything out of it because the second drop's not very good. And to me, it would make sense and it would justify bringing the train to a stop if there was a holding chain on the second drop. But that's a general, dive coaster complaint. This ride is just kind of following the dive coaster conventions in that way. So I'm not hating on this ride. I'm just speaking of dive coasters in general. But anyways, this is definitely aesthetically one of the better looking dive coasters I've ever seen. I think I've said that a million times in this video, but it just looks really good. Anyways, those were all the photographs we got on the ride. So I've been blabbing for nearly 30 minutes. I should probably move on now. Last thing I wanted to say is that Fiesta Texas is claiming on their website that this ride is going to run 3 trains, which to me, that sounds a little bit absurd considering how short the ride is. They have to dispatch trains pretty much like clockwork to make that work with 3 train operations. And I've heard that Six Flags is really, I've never been to a Six Flags park, but I've heard just in general the chain, they're not good with dispatching in a timely manner. And I've heard horror stories recently from Fiesta Texas with operations. So it seems like if they ran 3 trains on this thing, it would, just be a lot of sitting on brake run, and no one likes to do that, especially if these mesh restraints are tight. So hopefully they'll just run 2 trains unless it's a really crowded day, and not put the 3rd train on unless it's a really crowded day and they're willing to actually, operate the ride at a decent rate and dispatch trains at a decently fast rate. But, considering it's Six Flags and knowing Six Flags, they'll probably just have 1 train on it all the time, but it's capable of running 3 if it needs to. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, you must be pretty passionate about roller coasters and hearing other people's opinions about roller coasters. So if you have any thoughts about this ride, be sure to put them in the comments below. I'd love to talk to all of you guys about Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger here. I have to keep looking at the name because I forget Dr. Diabolical, and I actually forget Cliffhanger too. It's a bit of a mouthful there. I feel like most people will end up calling this either Diabolical or Cliffhanger just for simplicity's sake. But it'll be interesting to see which name catches on as people start talking about this ride more. Anyways, again, comment down below what you think of this ride, and hopefully I will do more videos like this in the future. I know I haven't covered a lot of amusement park videos on the channel, or I haven't covered a lot of amusement park news on the channel, but I love the amusement industry. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I have so much fun making these videos. Even like I've never been to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, but it makes me so happy just to sit here and talk about a new ride they're getting and stuff. So hopefully a lot more of this in the future, and talking to you guys about stuff going on in the industry, and our thoughts on it, etc., etc. So hopefully I'll catch you next time, and next time won't be too long because I'm anticipating some more Six Flags announcements soon, since they're not doing the whole collection video this year. I know we're supposed to get a announcement for a new coaster at Magic Mountain. I think they already have track on site, so hopefully we'll get that soon. But I'm talking too long now. Bye bye.